dfzradio.com.
Welcome to A Girl in a Garden on dfzradio.com. This is your host, Emily, and today is November 3rd, 5 p.m. This year is cruising along. We just got done with Halloween last weekend, which I didn't have any trick-or-treaters. I'm not exactly the most disappointed, though. I didn't buy any candy, and I didn't have any trick-or-treaters. I actually spent a nice weekend at home, but we had Halloween. Thanksgiving is this month. Or if you're in Canada, you had Thanksgiving already last month. And then we have Christmas coming up, and we're less than 2 months away from 2016. So this year is just cruising along. We're still having some pretty nice weather up in Northern California. Of course, it actually rained this weekend, and I got to experience something that it's been so long since I've been able to hear this. We had a really nice rainstorm on Sunday night, and Monday morning, so yesterday morning, I woke up around 5 in the morning, and it was pouring down rain, and I had my windows open, and I was actually able to snuggle in bed and listen to the falling rain. And if you live in California, you know that we haven't had rain in so long. It was just this feeling that I love. And I grew up in the Pacific Northwest, so being from Washington, it's a very familiar sound and feeling, and it was nice to actually see it. So I'm hoping we go into a rainy season. It's beautiful out today with all the leaves falling, but hopefully we get a lot more rain in California because we definitely need it. So I didn't have a show last week. I was at the 24th and the 25th. I was in Boston at the Maximum Yield Indoor Gardening Expo. And by the time flew there, worked a really long weekend, flew back, had some flight delays. By the time I got home on late last Monday night, I was completely wiped, and there was no way I could do a show. So I apologize for no show. If you're watching and listening today, if you do the Watch Live Now button, there's lots of pictures from the Max Yield show that should be on the background right now. So here's what I have to say about the Indoor Gardening Expo in Boston. It was much smaller than it was last year. It was smaller, a little bit more intimate, less companies, a lot less companies. A lot of the big name players did not have booths, so no GH, no Botanicare, no Sunlight Supply, no Hydro Farm, Fox Farm, Vortex Fans. There's quite a few missing companies. I will say just because they were missing from the show, it doesn't mean someone wasn't attending from the show from those companies. I actually had dinner with Botanicare one night and had a great conversation with them, but they just didn't do any of the shows. So much smaller show, but I will say for the turnout wise on Industry Day, we saw quite a few stores. We saw some new ones and a lot of our existing stores with excellent information and questions asked by the retailers. On Public Day, there was also a very, very good turnout. Smaller than last year, but again, lots of really good questions. You had people that were actually wanting to learn about gardening and growing indoors or just hydroponic growing as opposed to wanting samples. And one of the biggest complaints about these trade shows is the sampling. Now, part of it is some of the distributors, manufacturers go overboard and give everyone too many samples. And then a lot of the times you have end users who just want free stuff, even if they're never going to use it. They just want free stuff to sell on eBay. So the sampling over the past few years have gotten really out of control. A lot of the stores, when you have trade shows in those areas, they all of a sudden have no sales because these manufacturers have given out free samples to all their customers, and some people get a year's worth of free samples. So I will say that is definitely not being done that much. You have a few people like Psycho Platinum Series. They are a nutrient company. They always give away their kits, but they have switched from just doing an all-out giveaway to raffling them off. And I believe it's 3 p.m. on Public Day. On Sunday, they'll actually start the raffle, and you have to be present to win. So a lot less items are given away, and it also keeps the people in the trade show Because a lot of the time they'll go to the trade show, get as much free stuff as possible, and take off. And then as a manufacturer, you have this empty trade show for a half a day, which is not that helpful. So when they do the one giveaway later on in the afternoon, it keeps people in the show actively learning and asking good information. So all in all, for us and for Nanolux, because I was working in the Nanolux booth, it was an excellent show for us. Now for next year, Max Yield has eliminated some trade shows. So they were supposed to have 4 trade shows this year. They did 3. In 2016, they're only doing 2, which I'm just going to celebrate that there's only 2 trade shows. They will be doing a May trade show in Novi, Michigan, and then they will be doing the July trade show in San Francisco, back to where they had trade shows. It's going to be, I believe it's Pier 49, but talking with the Maximum Yield ladies, they said it will be back on the water in San Francisco. And that was always a great show. That was their flagship show that had the largest turnout. So next year, only 2 of the Maximum Yield indoor garden shows. But they should be really good turnout. And you have one, I guess, Midwest on an Eastern time zone for Michigan. And then you have the Pacific, Pacific Standard Time. So you have your West Coast as well. So it should be some great shows for next year. And if you ever have questions or want to learn more information, you can go to MaximumYield.com, or Indoor Garden Expo is also the other website. So coming up in November, next week, I am just getting ready for another trade show that I will be at with Nanolux. And that trade show is the 4th annual Marijuana Business Conference and Expo. It's November 11th through 13th at the Rio All Suites Hotel and Casino. So next Wednesday, the show opens, I believe, from 5 to 7 p.m. on Wednesday for a cocktail hour. And this show, I just did the one in Chicago earlier this year, which the show was a little too broken up for their trade show stuff. Not the best turnout for being in Chicago, but their main show is this one in Vegas. So according to the website and the last email I got, there is about 4,000 people registered to attend this show. And as I'm talking about this, there is marijuana in the name of this show. And it's in Vegas, which is not the most friendly place for something like marijuana. So this is actually, if you're listening, this is a business conference. So there's nothing to do with actual products. There's nothing with the crop that's there. What you're going to find is there's a crash course for opening dispensaries, being involved in this business. There's lots of classes, educational seminars. And then a lot of these exhibitors work in, say, lighting, for instance. There's lots of lighting companies, and lighting companies do sell into many product segments. This one happens to be crop specific. So we'll be talking about it, but we will not be having any marijuana products. This is an all business trade show. It's the minimum dress is business casual. So it's one of those suit up trade shows. It's all about professional networking, marketing, and getting your brand out there. So this is going to be a really big show. I believe it's not too late to attend, it's about $400 or $500 just to walk the show floor. And you can look up the 4th annual Marijuana Business Conference and Expo. I believe it's mjbizcon.com is the website. So that's only a week away, and it is the go-to and the last big trade show of the year, at least for these commercial shows that we do. And the rest of them are going to start picking up again in January. So next week, I will be definitely in Vegas, ready to have a good time and ready to learn all about this market segment some more. So for today's for today's show, we are going to be talking about my backyard. And it's a short video, so you can watch live now. It's just a video on updating on what's going on with my backyard. I went and picked up a tote of soil this weekend from Hydro Depot in Santa Rosa. Vermicrop was nice enough to give me a tote of soil. And that is actually a full pallet of soil. And instead of having them wrapped in individual plastic bags in 1.5 cubic feet or 2 cubic feet, it's actually a tote that holds all the pallets worth of soil in one container. So I went and picked that up this weekend and started to redo my yard, which I will say is probably in the worst shape I've ever seen it, just because of all the changes that's going on in it. But it's improving. So you're going to see what my yard looks like with a tote of soil being added to it. And this will fix a lot of my soil problems. I'm also replaying an interview that I did with Laura from Farmscape. And why have a lawn when you can farmscape? Rip out your lawns, plant some vegetables. Even if you aren't into gardening, you can still have a garden. You can actually even pay a service such as this company Farmscape to take care of it and to educate you on how to take care of your own garden. So you don't have to have a green thumb. You can have a black thumb and you can be willing to learn. So you can garden anywhere. This is a great thing, Farmscape, for urban areas. They're in the Bay Area and they're also down in Southern California. So we're going to take a brief break, hear from a Girl in a Garden show sponsors, and when we come back, we'll be talking with Laura from Farmscape and then an update on my backyard. So this is Emily on Girl in a Garden on dfcradio.com.
Yeah! dfcradio.com.
Here at Green Grow, we take organic gardening seriously. With our mycorrhizae products, you'll increase growth and help reduce the need to replace old, worn-out soil. We help provide electrolytes and maximize nutrient intake to make your indoor garden lush and green. So give your plants the strength that they need and breathe life into your soil with Green Grow. Find us at your local nursery or visit us at thegreengrow.com. That's the green, GRO.com.
Listen to the beautiful Emily Walter on dfcradio.com. Hey, Dr. Duff, are you signing up for another one of those internet dating sites after your divorce?
Nah, I'm just ordering these freaking douchebags from China here. Just gonna be saving a lot of money on it. About $1 a bag.
Did you say douchebags?
Yeah, they're pots. They're fabric pots. They're, made in China. They save $1 a bag from all the other.
Oh, it sounds like an imitation smart pot or something.
Yeah, save $1, but, I'm pretty sure these douchebags are gonna work.
Dude, I had a buddy of mine who used those same douchebags. He bought them direct from China. It killed his whole garden.
Bro, what? So I'm better off spending that extra $1 on a smart pot?
I'd get a smart pot.
Don't be a Duff man. Make sure to buy the original patented Smart Pot. Check them out at smartpots.com.
You are listening to the beautiful Emily Walter on dfcradio.com.
We're listening to dfcradio.com.
Welcome to A Girl in a Garden on dfcradio.com. This is your host, Emily. And today I am transplanting my rosemary from soil to cocoa. So I am going from regular soil gardening to hydroponics. What I will need is healthy plants, and these are rosemary plants that I picked up from Friedman's Hardware. It is not exactly the time of year, which is November, to go shopping for plants. So rosemary is one of the easiest ones to find, and actually one of the only ones to find in the independent nurseries this time of year. I also need cocoa coir, containers, warm running water, and Michaels from Extreme Gardening, and this will help with the transplant shock. Gently remove the plant from the container and wash the soil off from the roots under warm water. It took about 10 minutes to clean off the rosemary plants. Once clean, I set aside into containers. This is now the time that I prep my cocoa. Now, if you're not sure what cocoa coir is, it's the natural fiber extracted from the husk of the coconut. Technically, coir is a fibrous material found between the hard internal shell and the outer coat of the coconut. Cocoa coir is the closest soilless media to soil. That was a mouthful. Anyway, I always suggest starting with cocoa and the first hydroponic medium if soil is what's been used in the past. It's the best to start with. It's close to what you know, and it's the most forgiving. So when someone comes in and they start talking that they want to start hydroponic gardening, which is fantastic, they've soil gardened in the past, cocoa is what I will typically steer people to start with. It's easy, it's forgiving, it's close to what you use in the past if you've used soil already. Some of the qualities of cocoa is cocoa has an ideal pH range of 6 to 6.7. It holds 8 to 9 times its weight in water. It's 22% air even when fully saturated. Extremely easy to rehydrate after being dehydrated, and 100% renewable resource. For more information about cocoa and other hydroponic mediums, please visit the website justforgrowers.com, and that's www.justforgrowers.com. This site has a plethora of gardening information, and it talks quite a bit about hydroponic gardening. They also have different flyers and sheets available for stores to print out if needed for educational material. So definitely check that one out. I learned some about cocoa from here as well as other gardening resources, but this is always a good place to go online to get your information. So today I am using Gold Label cocoa for transplanting. Gold Label cocoa is manufactured using only matured woody brown coconut husk for optimal quality and stability of the substrate. The husk fibers are washed to remove excess EC, buffered to remove potassium, and then sieved into fine fibers. All of the processing is done in an environmentally friendly way under supervision of the RHP authority, thus ensuring quality, stability, and crop safety. The Gold Label cocoa can be used with organic as well as synthetic nutrients if needed. It's a very versatile substrate. It's something that I've used for several years for both indoor and outdoor. And typically I will use this cocoa for my indoor grows. And once it's done, I add it into my compost pile, compost it in with a bunch of other great stuff from my garden, and it goes in the garden for next year. So I've used it several times, and like I've said earlier in this post, if you are used to soil gardening and you're wanting to try hydroponics, cocoa is the next choice to go with. So once my cocoa is all set up, I pre-wet the cocoa, and then I will fill my growing containers, and then I add extreme gardening mycos to the roots. And for transplanting, it recommends 1 to 2 tablespoons per plant site, and this is what I went with when planting, so I'm using the label directions. So I am using the mycos from Extreme Gardening. Their website is Extreme Gardening. Well, it's www.xtreme_gardening.com. So the mycos will actually improve the root structure, increases nutrient uptake, and So when I'm transplanting, I am using the 1 to 2 tablespoons per plant site of the mycos from Extreme Gardening. Their website is www.xtreme_gardening.com. And I am using this to improve the root structure, and this also increases nutrient uptake. It will also help with the different transplant shock that can happen. Transplanting soil to hydro, cloning, any transplant that you do with your plant can be some of the largest shock that it goes through, and it can suffer afterwards. And you can notice that sometimes when you look at your plants and they're a bit droopy and they don't look that good after transplanting, that's from the transplant shock. And I'll admit, I dumb that down a bit, but that's the easiest way. When I start to see the plant doesn't look that healthy, it's typically from the transplant. So once I transplant these, give them the mycos, make sure they have damp cocoa that's in the container. I move the plants under the grow lights, And then I water a nutrient solution. This one I happen to be using Flora Nova with. So I start watering it with Flora Nova and keep it under the lighting schedule. It's under a 18.6 right now for lighting. And I just let it grow and be happy. And that was how I transplanted my rosemary to cocoa. So now I have hydroponics going on. Thank you very much. This is Emily from A Girl in a Garden on dfcradio.com.
dfcradio.com.
Here at Green Grow, we take organic gardening seriously. With our mycorrhizae products, you'll increase growth and help reduce the need to replace old, worn-out soil. We help provide electrolytes and maximize nutrient intake to make your indoor garden lush and green. So give your plants the strength that they need and breathe life into your soil with Green Grow. Find us at your local nursery or visit us at thegreengrow.com. That's thegreen.com.
You are listening to the beautiful Emily Walter on dfcradio.com.
A Girl in a Garden fall garden cleanup tip. It's harvest time. It's time to clean up, and reusing or cleaning out your smart pots to reuse them again for the next season is a great cost-effective thing you can do. One of the ways that you can do this is by turning the container inside out after emptying the soil or the soil media and leaving it out in the sun to dry out. Maybe move it a few times, brush off all the excess soil or media, and you can store it. If you do want to sterilize it, you can always soak it or sterilize it with Simple Green or a light bleach solution. If you are cleaning several smart pots, one thing you can do is dump all the contents out and add them into a garbage can or a big container. Add in water and a mix of Simple Green or bleach. Don't mix them together. Agitate them, let them sit overnight, agitate them again, empty the container, fill it with water, agitate it again, make sure they're nice and clean and sterile, and then you can reuse them. So there are 2 different ways to clean out your Smart Pots garden containers so you can use them again for the next growing season. For more information about Smart Pots, you can visit smartpots.com. And this is a quick tip from Emily on A Girl in a Garden.
We're listening to dfcradio.com.
A Girl in a Garden here, and right now we're looking at my backyard, and if you see it, it is probably in the worst shape that it has ever been in. Now, there's a few reasons for this. First, it's fall. It's time to clean up some of these plants, pull some stuff up. I also have this stuff, I'm not even sure what to call it. It's not dirt, but this right here is what is in the soil. It is absolutely disgusting. So I had a tote of soil delivered today. There's about 20 pounds of bat guano, which I'm going to mix in. And this is vermifier soil. Lots and lots of it. So this part of my garden is going to be transformed into all soil. So lots of things to redo, unplant, transplant, move. Over here is just more soil. And then this side of the garden, which I have shown quite a few times, is going to be the container garden. And so I have lots of soil, lots of containers to fill up, lots of smart pots to fill up. And I'm going to fill in this whole area with containers and mulch and do some weeding and use some vinegar to get some of the weeds out. So here it is, my garden at the worst that it will ever be. So lots of great soil, lots of great amendments, lots of great plants, but it is in a terrible, terrible condition. So now we're going to see what I can do with this. First, we're going to start by filling these smart pots, moving around to container area, and lots of digging. So check back in a little bit to see what I am doing to transform this backyard that's in a pretty rough shape. A girl in a garden here, and this is an update from yesterday's video of when I had all the soil delivered and said my garden was in the worst shape it's ever been. So I've worked a little bit in the garden. It's raining today, so it was a dirty work day. Actually, these are my pants and shoes right now. So one of the perks of gardening in the fall is it's dirty. So on this side, I didn't change too much. I've actually added some containers though. This is my container side of the garden with mulch in it. So I've added in some more mulch. I just fertilized the strawberries. Actually, I fertilized everything with some Vermeil 666. Get a little bit of oomph on it. It's actually raining a little bit, so it's going to soak in. So we have rosemary, lavender, San Pedro cactus, banana, mint, artichokes, chives, more San Pedro, and then some smart pots. Look, there's even one from Boston at the show last weekend. So some smart pots I need to plant and fill in, and then this vertical planter that I need to put back together and fill back up with soil. So eventually this is all going to be filled in with mulch, as we're looking at right here, and this whole path. So there's a drip system that gets to be installed eventually. That will help save on water. But this whole path is containers, mostly smart pots containers. So this is going to continue the same. Fertilize, add plants, maybe shift stuff around, add in some drip system, and this is going to be a great container garden. And what's still being worked on is over here that's just piles of soil and stuff that needs to be cleaned up, and you will start to see what happens in my backyard. So this is checking in. This is the Girl in a Garden, Emily, on dfcradio.com.
Welcome to A Girl in a Garden on dfcradio.com. This is your host, Emily, and today I'm speaking with Laura from Farmscape, and she is the Bay Area Regional Director and co-owner. Hi, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good, girl.
Great to hear. Now, I talked a little bit about Farmscape last week because I was saying Laura was going to be a guest. So what can you tell us about Farmscape?
Well, we are California's largest urban farming company. So what that means is we design, install, and maintain urban farms from just a few raised beds at your home all the way to big rooftop urban farms for corporate campuses.
So for the first part is the home gardening. And this is something if you do not have... Well, the first part is if you've never gardened before, sometimes it can be a little bit overwhelming. And there's great books out there. If you look on the internet, you can find thousands of pages and not sure where to start. So Farmscape is one of those places that you can start out with. So what do you guys do for the home gardener?
Well, before we get to that, am I like breathing tacos right in your face?
No, you're doing really good.
Would you lie to me?
Well, I will say I've been on a radio show where I've eaten a burrito live, so I would probably tell you.
Because when we were setting this up for your listeners at home, we were sitting like a good 6 feet away from each other, and I was eating a nice burrito bowl, and now we're like 2 feet away from each other, and I want to answer your questions about my company because this is a great opportunity for me, but all I can think about is like I'm breathing onions directly in her face.
We are totally fine over here.
Well, do you think that maybe the folks at home can just smell this interview from where they sit based on my description thus far?
Maybe. So she was eating this wonderful burrito bowl, and I was just staring at it going, that looks really good.
I'm so sorry. And I should have just called and said, dude, you want a burrito bowl? Because I'm going to get a burrito bowl, but I was hungry and I couldn't think beyond my own sphere. Anyway, why would you want to do this on your with Farmscape? Yeah, like you said, if you go online, there's a million different avenues you can go. You can do biodynamic farming or square foot gardening. You can grow this sort of food or that sort of food. And you go and you open Sunset and it's super beautiful and you look outside at your garden and it's not looking like that. And so what I think we do really well is make everything easy and we make it all make sense. So when you purchase a Farmscape raised bed, we have our own premium organic soil blend that already has compost worked into it. So you don't have to then figure out what the right compost is or the right fertilizer. We just tell you and it's already in there. We do our drip irrigation very specifically. And if you're maintaining the garden on your own, we show you how to adjust it and how to test to see if the water is enough. And then at the end of it, either we're going to be maintaining the garden and planting the right things, the right spacing, all in the right order, or we're handing you a crop guide so you can go to the nursery and pick the right things out for the season and your microclimate. And at the end of the experience, you should be set up to succeed. And the next steps very clearly outlined.
So here's what I've done with my raised beds, and I've talked about raised beds before. I had to hire someone to build them. And then I also had to hire someone to put in the drip system or to convert my sprinkler into a drip system. And then I planted some wonderful plants in there, but too close. And I made every single mistake that's out there. And it's all part of the learning process, and it's okay to make mistakes. And I keep saying it's okay to kill plants as part of that learning process. I kill more than most people, so let me be your expert and tell you what not to do. But this is why you come to the experts. They make you have a successful garden for the year. So you guys do a monthly thing, a weekly thing, or you get them set up so they can garden on their own?
Yes. Yeah, there's the weekly service. So we come by every week for a set rate that includes materials. So it's the same all year round, usually between $40 and $100 a week. And while that might seem pricey to some folks, the way I suggest they look at it is it's not just a landscaping service. You can come out and learn from us. And that's actually what I would really prefer because I'm an environmentalist. So I don't want to be driving to your house every week. I want you to learn how to farm, and then I want you to fire me, and because you've learned so much and you can do it on your own. But some people, they work 2 jobs, or both them and their spouse works. And they've got kids, they're busy, and that's great. They want to grow their own food. They don't have the time for it. They hire us. Another method is you can take care of it on your own, and we can stop by once a month or once a quarter and just give you a little advice and some suggestions on what to do over the next period you're maintaining it. And that does not include materials. And then there's the Via Con Dios approach where we just put the garden in. And you, at the end of the day, there's nothing planted in it. We just install it so you've got the irrigation and soil correct. It's laid out correctly. And then you take it from there.
Now, the nice thing about raised beds is I keep talking about if you're older, you don't have to bend down. There's easier to reach. Less work that you're doing. If you're in a wheelchair, you can still have access to the garden beds. If you're a little kid, you can just walk right up to it and use it. So there's so many. I like raised beds because, well, I just really like them. I'll say that over and over again. But they're really easy to maintain. And you guys are using redwood. Is this so? You have one main set for the raised beds. And what kind of raised beds are you using?
We really promote the redwood raised beds. Redwood lasts a nice long while, usually 5 to 10 years. And we try to isolate it so it's not going to be sitting in the middle of your lawn. We try to put a little moat of gravel or mulch around your raised beds. And if you think about that, all the reasons you mentioned for having raised beds are absolutely right. But they're also better for keeping pests out. Because if you think about a slug or a snail, and they're leading their terrible lives in the ground, and they're, all of a sudden confronted with this like massive Sahara desert of gravel, and then to go up the side of a raised bed before they get to anything green. So you can actually minimize the pests that you have with a raised bed. And so you can keep things that kind of go over the raised bed from getting in. But then also, if you have gophers, you can put gopher wire underneath the raised bed and staple it in, and then you've got nothing coming up underneath it. And if you don't have gophers now, plant a garden, and then you will get gophers, most likely, because if you open a salad bar, you get customers, so.
And I have to agree with that one completely. I have built gardens in the grounds, and they end up with so many issues. And it's not going to happen for everywhere, and it's going to depend on where you are and the time of year and the place. But raised beds, I find, are just so much easier. You do get less bug issues. Slugs typically are going to, if they have to go through mulch, if they have to go up the raised bed, they're going to look for a different food source. Mm-hmm. They aren't going to have to go after your beautiful tomato plants or whatever you have. And it's the same way with container gardening. Raised beds just seem to be a way to contain this nice organic soil or compost in it. You don't have to usually retreat your soil every year. You usually add into it. You add more compost, you add more beneficials into it, but you don't have to redo it every single year. So it's kind of self-sustaining. Redwood is one of my favorite materials to use. It's non-treated, and it lasts a lot longer than some of the other treated stuff out there. And if you read on some of those reports, you don't want treated wood for your raised beds.
No, it's super gross. There's like formaldehyde and stuff in it, isn't there? I haven't looked into
that and some other nasty, nasty stuff. So yeah, you have to remember this also. What material are you using? So redwood is typically your go-to material if you're wanting to use wood.
When you were writing the labels on organic pesticides, so do you know what they're treating the wood with right now? The pressure treated wood?
I don't off the top of my head. There used to be this huge list, and some of it's carcinogenic. Some of it will just leach into your groundwater, or it's going to leach into your garden bed. You just don't know what it is. And that's why I don't recommend it. That's why it's not recommended. And that's why you keep seeing those pallet gardens, and I keep shaking my head going, no, don't do that unless it's not treated.
Yeah, that's pretty gross. We also do them out of steel stock tanks. That's fine. You drill holes at the bottom of those and use that. Another way, and this is really specific to the backyard, if you've got a backyard and you've got masonry stone or flagstone all over it, I've had people make them out of those materials, and then we just come back and fill them in.
So, yeah, and there's always other materials you can do it with. But if you're working with a yard, you say you have a nice space, it's nice sun, it's the perfect place to do a garden. It sounds like you're always going to recommend the raised beds with the redwood.
Well, my experience lies primarily in California, where we've got this heavy clay soil in a lot of the urban areas. And so, like you said, if you are treating it every year and amending the soil and turning it over, it's a lot of work. And then when we get these rains like we get up here in the Bay Area, it just all washes away and the clay stays. So by doing the raised beds, you're preserving your labor. And like you said, just filling it in every year. I'm a big fan of the raised beds, if you can't tell. You just get better food. You just get better crops in a smaller amount of space. It's not a total mess.
Yes, this is why we love raised beds. So part of what Farmscape does is they promote all organic gardening. So you guys actually give them the tools, or give your customers the tools, either with you guys doing it or for them the information on what products would be best for their garden.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we maintain all of our gardens with organic pesticides. So, just the standard safer brand insecticidal soap for aphids, BT for larvae. But the main thing that we encourage our farmers to do is just use their hands and remove the insects from the crops. I mean, we're not talking about huge farms here. So if it's 2 12 by 4 raised beds. That's enough that you can go through and in an hour's time look under most of the leaves and pull any of the tomato hornworms or cabbage loopers or aphids off the crops themselves. And that way you just don't have to spray as much. Even though it's organic, it's like...
And this is one of the reasons I suggest scouting your garden every day. Just a few minutes every day. You can always spray products out there, but picking them off, and I'll tell you, I've smashed a lot of caterpillars in my life, but picking them off and getting rid of them is going to be the fastest way to get rid of them. And then eventually you're going to want to spray them because there's going to be babies that are going to be planted. There's going to be eggs. There's going to be a few different life cycles out there, but always do that scouting and just a few minutes every day. See what's out there. See what the plants look like. Are they looking funky? Do they need something? Do they look amazing? Let's hope they look amazing. But if there's something going on, just take a few minutes just to glance out there.
Yeah, and when I first started farming professionally, I had a really hard time. I was vegan, and that's what brought me to this. And I stopped being vegan after about a week because gophers were eating my food, and it was on, I wanted to kill these guys and not eat them and not use their bodies for anything useful. I just wanted them dead, And so if you're a sensitive sort and you're picking these caterpillars off the tomatoes and you're feeling a little squeamish about squishing them, that's okay. You can put them in a bucket and you can take them to the park, and let them go there. Eventually, though, I think that most people come to realize that while gardening is a very sweet pastime, the main business of the garden is sex, food, death. That's what it's all about, So you get to kind of see these very base instincts kind of get played out, and those caterpillars, they're there to eat your food, so they got to go.
I love that. Sex, food, and death. I'm going to use that a few times.
That's the whole thing. Sex, food, death. What are we eating? Who are we sleeping with? And then we die. That's it.
There we go. There's the breakdown of gardening and life. I love that. I'm kind of speechless. I'm like, yeah, you're totally right. I'm going to be using that from now on. I'll have to quote you on that one.
It's yours.
Sounds great on that one. So Farmscape is based in LA and also the Bay Area. They've been around for about 7 years now. Is that correct?
Yeah, we started in 2008 in Claremont, California, and then expanded to Los Angeles in 2009-ish. And yeah, so we've been kicking it ever since, and we're right around 400 projects down in LA that we've installed. We maintain about half of them. We have a staff of 10 in LA, installing, selling, and maintaining all those gardens. And we just expanded to the Bay Area. We opened 2 weeks ago, and we're on we just sold project number 4 up here.
And I saw Laura at the San Francisco Flower and Garden Show, and she had a setup with one of the raised beds and a little bit of information about Farmscape. And I was like, I need to talk to this person. This is exactly the kind of thing that hopefully my listeners, you guys out there, are into, and you want to learn more about this. So you also mentioned that you do commercial or large-scale farms. So what are some of these projects you've worked on?
Commercial installations right now make up about 10% of our projects. Most of what we do is at the home, but what I'm really excited about is doing rooftop farms, campus farms, farms at country clubs, and getting this whole different group of people into urban farming. Because when you think of urban farming, you think of the people with the canvas bags from NPR, to some degree, and getting groups like the Jonathan Club, which is one of the oldest social clubs in Los Angeles, involved in urban farming, to me is wow, we've really gotten this to go mainstream if the Jonathan Club is into it. So that project is up on the rooftop of the J Club in downtown LA. It's on this great old turn-of-the-century building. And they've converted one of their tennis courts up there to be this massive, it's 60 raised bed urban farm that they grow food for their 3 restaurants within the in the club. And it started with like just 5 raised beds, and they were so into it, and they got so excited to see on their menu at their restaurant that it was grown right there, and they got such a huge response. They built this massive urban farm up there that's now the largest urban farm in Los Angeles, and it's the largest rooftop garden in LA as well.
And that's amazing. Now, I know you guys do a lot of home use stuff, and I always seem to hone in on some of these commercial things because I personally want to see more of these urban farms, more of these restaurants using things. And if you've listened, and as you know, I've talked about John Ash, how they now grow their own microgreens. They have their own farm. I mean, it's picking up. And I am out in Sonoma County, and that's where John Ash is. And we're in this huge farmland, and there's all these people doing it. But there's also this urban area. We're talking the Bay Area. We're talking LA. And as you know, the show is based out of Long Beach. I know a lot of you live around there. You're stuck in that traffic. You have to drive a long way to see some of this fresh food. So you can find it in community gardens. You can find it in backyards where you guys have built some of these projects. Or you find these amazing restaurants or communities that are getting these installations put in.
Yeah, and that's cool that a lot of your listeners are down in Long Beach. I didn't think about that. I was down in LA for 7 years, and I want to poke the bear in the zoo a little bit here, like, because you'd think LA would be like the hub of all this sort of activity. And while LA, talks a good game about sustainability, I haven't seen a lot of support from the politicians in LA to really put do any sort of legislating to enable more urban farming. So that would be really exciting to see. Up here in the Bay Area, people are so much more willing politicians.
And it's amazing how much more urban gardening stuff we have in LA. I just moved out, or I'm sorry, not in LA, in the Bay Area.
I was like, huh?
No, in the Bay Area. And I just moved out here, and I've probably talked about this on the show before. Like, my sister helps run the farmers market, the Ferry Building in San Francisco, and we get to meet all these urban farmers and regular farmers that bring their produce into it. But you have a lot more willing politicians. They want to convert these old lots, and you can put them into community gardens, and you're not going to be afraid that my land's going to be taken away immediately. There's a lot more push for it, which is fantastic. There's so many programs out there. There's edible school programs, and I just hear a lot more of them in the Bay Area compared to LA, it seems like.
Oh, sure. And, in San Francisco, you've got Eli Zegas at Spur, who is their policy guy for urban ag, who wrote the bill, it's AB something or another, that allows for people who own empty lots to gift them to urban ag for, I believe it's 3 years, and get their property taxes assessed as though their property was worth $12,000. They get these huge cuts in property taxes. Now, my understanding is that each of the local municipalities have to write their own version of that to implement it into their blah, blah, blah. I really don't understand politics, but the fact that San Francisco has Eli Zegas at Spur writing bills around urban ag, and then Hannah Schulman, who's the new urban farming coordinator for the city of San Francisco, it is just so encouraging. Because for a while I was honestly like, man, I really hope this isn't a flash in the pan. Like, it's going pretty well right now. The phone is ringing. We're pretty busy. We're installing Project 400. But every now and then you're just like, am I the skip it of like the 2010s, Like, God, I hope not.
No, I was explaining at Christmas time, or maybe it was Thanksgiving, to my family of what I've been working on. And one of my family members kind of looks at me and he says, whatever you're doing is a fad. And I was like, well, thank you. And my dad's sitting next to me. He's like, so was the pet rock, and the guy made $1 million. So what else do you got to say? It was really funny, but I'm like, it's not a fad. You live in Arizona. Where do you think your food comes from? And we start having this discussion of, well, it comes from the grocery store. And you're like, Okay, so where does it come from before then? Have you tasted a tomato from your backyard? Well, probably not because you don't grow them. But have you tasted them from the backyard or from the grocery store? What do you think goes in the grocery store? So you're educating people about food as well as gardening, it seems like.
So you don't think we're like disco?
I hope not. I have gotten, I don't even want, no, we are not a fad. We're here to stay.
I'm glad for that vote of confidence. I think so too. And I think you put it well that it's about food, and people just really love to eat.
True. Now, if people, and I'm guilty of being in a hurry and probably not eating the best stuff all the time, but when you start investing in real food, and I'm not talking fast food, that is fake food. It's trash.
What about In-N-Out?
Every once in a while, it's okay. There's different levels. If I'm going to talk to a burger, McDonald's is absolutely disgusting.
Mm-hmm.
In-N-Out every once in a while, yeah, you just got to do it.
Oh, you got to have In-N-Out. Like once or twice a year, like when you're coming back from the beach.
Yeah, once or twice a year.
Yeah.
But when you start talking about your food or what goes in your tomato was picked green and it's gas and it ends up this beautiful looking fruit on the grocery store shelf that tastes like something red. And then you install your own garden and you spend all summer growing these tomatoes and you cut open your first tomato and you eat it. It tastes 1,000 times different. You're going to realize like this is what sugar levels are. This is what bricks. This is what your produce is supposed to taste like. This is why we garden.
Yeah, and like they say that kids hate their vegetables. Well, kids aren't dummies. Most vegetables taste like crap because you mentioned bricks testing. There's no sugar left in the foods. And so when you grow beautiful homegrown produce, and it is really naturally sweet, and the leaves of the kale are really tender and not these like hard or lifeless, limp, sad things on this poor kid's plate that he's got to eat before he can go do something that's enjoyable. It's like, yeah, of course a kid doesn't want to eat vegetables, But if you have a vegetable garden in your backyard and your kid has these baby plants that he puts in the garden and that he or she maintains every week, and then he or she gets to go out and pull the caterpillars off of it and pick the kale and bite little holes in the leaves so they can have like eyes and make kale masks with it and eat snap peas and hang out there and maybe see a praying mantis. It's like, oh, all of a sudden this isn't this terrible burden that mom and dad has placed on me. It's like, oh, this is what I do when I'm out playing in the yard. I grab some snap peas and I snack on them. And it doesn't become this like push-pull between parents and kids.
And this is why we garden. And this is why we get kids involved with gardening as soon as we can. This is why we have school gardens, restaurant gardens, backyard gardens. So if people want to find out more information for Farmscape, where is the best place to visit?
Visit our website. It is Farmscape, FARMSCAPE, gardens.com.
And they also have a Facebook page, which I'll put a link. That one's Farmscape. But visit the website first. That's the best place to get the information. They have a newsletter sign up too. And I signed up recently and I get these nice little updates every once in a while. And I make sure to read those. So I put those starred in my inbox of I want that email. So I have to say thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you. Appreciate you coming over.
Yeah, I've had a great time. I got to come over to Laura's house. We got to talk about gardening, Farmscape, what's going on in LA for what they do, and the upcoming stuff in the Bay Area. So visit their website for more information. I'll be sure to post the link up when this goes on the blog post on the website that's finally up again, which is agirlinagarden.com. Finally got fixed. You can check that one out. So thank you very much. And until next time, this is Emily on A Girl in a Garden on dfcradio.com. Welcome back to A Girl in a Garden on dfcradio.com. This is your host, Emily. And a big thank you to Laura from Farmscape for talking about gardening and what her background is on gardening. And urban gardening is something you can do if you live in an urban area. So don't feel that you're limited to where you live, meaning if you can garden or not. There's lots of different options for gardening. for me, I do live in a rural area. I do have a backyard garden, but I also have a very small house, and I have equipment so I can grow indoors if I want to. So this weekend I'll be starting some new seeds and some rock wool, which is one of my favorite things to start seeds in. Rock wool, if you're not familiar with it, it's spun basilica rock. Think of it as it's how they make cotton candy. Same thing with hot molten rock. So that's how you get rock wool from it. So I can grow seeds indoors. You can grow on your windowsills. You can have a community garden plot, container gardenings. You can do stuff like farmscape and rip out your yard and get some raised beds in there. So don't ever feel that where you live is going to be dictating if you can garden or not, because you can always adapt to something. You can always find a garden plot, use some containers, grow indoors. You can always garden no matter where you are. So never use that as a limiting factor. So thank you very much for Laura for joining me, for being a guest on A Girl in a Garden. And as you saw, the other video was an update of my backyard, which I've said this a few times, but it's pretty scary looking. And I believe we have one more lovely weekend for Northern California before we start getting super rainy season. So I have my work cut out for me this weekend to get some of this stuff under control. I was able to clean up a lot of it on Sunday, and then it's poured down rain. So I now have dirt everywhere. And it kind of comes down to, I don't have a truck. And so I sometimes have to rely on people's help. And I found out the hard way I probably should have just rented a truck for this. I had a friend help me, which was super generous and extremely nice. And I explained, this is exactly what we have to do in order to get this delivered and unloaded, and this is what I need for my backyard. And we went in the yard and we're like, all right, let's put all the soil here. This is where it needs to go so I can get everything rearranged. And I will say by the end of that, I was just like, why did I have someone help me? They've actually created more work than anything else. So as we said, there was going to be a pile of soil in one area of the yard. Absolutely didn't happen. We're going to keep it clean and put everything into the wheelbarrow and slowly move some of the stuff over. Didn't happen. I had to clean out my whole driveway for my landlords. It was a mess. And there was only 2 of us, and we probably should have had one more person and one more wheelbarrow to be moving all of this stuff, because it was just a lot of work to do at once. So I was forever grateful for the help, since I don't have a truck, but at the same time, I created a whole bunch more work for myself. Maybe it's a guy thing too. I went through and explained exactly my objection of why he was there and what needed to be done, and by the end of it, it kind of happened, but not how it was organized. So I have a lot of things to clean up in my backyard. Luckily, the container garden part of the garden is completely done. I just have to lay a little bit more mulch and add in some more plants. But I don't have much to do on that side. Now it's the big square part of my garden where I am planning on growing in the ground. And I need to dig up a whole bunch of stuff, pull out some plants, and get that vermifier in there, along with a bunch of amendments that I've gotten from various trade shows. So lots of work to be done on my backyard. And I definitely will be giving updates on what changes I've been making and why I'm doing this, so I can have a lovely garden for next year. And spring isn't that far away, so it's time to get that garden cleaned up and some of the leaves cleaned up and ready for winter, and then planting in the springtime. If you haven't gotten a chance, you can always check out A Girl in a Garden's YouTube channel. I have finally gotten some time to be able to start updating some of the videos. So new videos have been posted, some of the stuff from last week, making pesto, growing basil in the backyard. I've also started posting some new blog posts up on A Girl in a Garden finally. So due to some travel and some previous engagements, I just have not had too much time to work on the website, but it's now being updated, so definitely check it out. agirlinagarden.com. I also have lots of articles and interesting garden tidbits posted on A Girl in a Garden Facebook page, and that's facebook.com/agirlinagarden. And I'm going to leave the show with that. So until next week, this is Emily on dfcradio.com. Have a great one, everyone.
DFCRadio.com.